No, all the blemishes are there. You know, you see your life flash before your eyes just before you pass away. I don't think I'm dead.
Jon Bon Jovi's rock-solid marriage is hanging by a thread, and his legendary voice is slipping away. Behind the scenes, his wife, Dorothea, confronts him with the harsh reality of his fading performances. Medical scans paint an even darker picture. One of his vocal cords is thickening in a way it shouldn't, while the other is wasting away. Will Dorothea finally walk away now that his voice is failing? Join us as we find out why Jon Bon Jovi's wife is saying goodbye after his tragic diagnosis. A rock legend loses his voice. The year was 2022. Jon Bon Jovi stood on stage in Nashville, delivering the final notes of Livin' on a prayer as thousands cheered. But behind the curtain, something felt off. The confidence that had carried him through decades of sold-out shows wavered as he turned to his wife, Dorothea. He wanted reassurance, but her answer hit hard. His voice wasn't what it used to be. The power, the range, and the signature sound that once filled stadiums had weakened. Fans might not have noticed right away, but Jon felt it, and now, so did she. For months, the signs had been there. High notes cracked. Long phrases left him gasping. At first, he chalked it up to exhaustion, the toll of nearly 40 years on the road, but deep down, he feared it was something worse. The next morning, a specialist confirmed his worst nightmare. Scans showed that one vocal cord had thickened unnaturally, while the other had weakened. Vocal atrophy. The diagnosis was cold and clinical. Vocal issues were not uncommon, but this was unique. If your vocal cords are meant to be symmetrical, let's pretend for the sake of conversation that they should be as thick as your thumb. One of mine was as thick as a thumb, but the other was as thick as a pinky, Jon explained. To him, it felt like his very identity was slipping away. Singing wasn't just what he did, it was who he was. He had shared a stage with Pavarotti and spent decades perfecting his craft. And now, the voice that built his career was failing him. The thought was unbearable. In quiet moments, he wrestled with questions he never thought he'd have to ask. What happens when the one thing that defines you is taken away? Doctors suspected that COVID-19 might have made things worse. Back in 2021, Jon tested positive just before a fan event in Miami. At the time, his symptoms were mild, but new research suggested the virus could cause long-term damage to the respiratory system, especially for singers. What could have been a slow decline became a rapid one. But giving up was never an option. In June 2022, Jon underwent vocal fold medialization surgery, a procedure meant to strengthen his deteriorating cords. The recovery was grueling. Every day started with breathing exercises. Every note had to be relearned. His voice, once an effortless force, became something he had to fight for. During this battle, he found an unexpected mentor in Shania Twain. She had faced a similar struggle years earlier, and her support meant everything. She knew what it was like to have a voice that no longer obeyed, to stare down the possibility of never singing the same way again. Progress was slow, but by 2024, there were signs of hope. His voice wasn't the same, but it carried a different kind of strength, one built on resilience. When Bon Jovi released their 16th album, Forever, longtime fans noticed the change. The sound was deeper, more measured, and laced with hard-earned emotion. One critic put it best, in finding a new voice, Bon Jovi has found new meaning. The fight isn't over, but one thing is certain, the legend refuses to be silenced. As Jon Bon Jovi struggled to regain his voice, another battle was brewing behind the scenes. His marriage, once rock-solid, was now under pressure, from public scrutiny, personal struggles, and the relentless glare of fame. Jon met his wife, Dorothea Hurley, when they were teenagers, and aside from a brief split when the rocker dated Diane Lane, they had been together ever since. "We finally ran away on a day off and went to Vegas and, got married," Jon once recalled. But just like his voice, was he about to lose it all? When Dorothea Hurley skipped the April 2024 screening of Thank You, Good Night, the Bon Jovi story, rumors spread fast. Her absence from the red carpet raised eyebrows, especially since it came just weeks after Jon admitted that he hadn't always been faithful during their 34-year marriage. The tabloids ran wild with speculation, spinning tales of a relationship on the verge of collapse. The truth, however, was far less dramatic but no less challenging. Dorothea was at home recovering from COVID-19 and unable to attend the event. A representative later confirmed she was feeling better, but the moment highlighted just how much public pressure their marriage had endured over the years. Their story didn't start under the bright lights of fame. Long before the sold-out stadiums, they were just two kids from Sayreville, New Jersey, high school sweethearts with simple dreams. While Jon chased a music career, Dorothea followed her passion for karate, eventually becoming an instructor. Their relationship wasn't built on industry connections or fleeting celebrity romance, it was rooted in years of shared history. Long before Bon Jovi became a household name, in 1989, at the height of the band's success, they shocked everyone with a quick, no-frills wedding in Las Vegas. No extravagant ceremony. No A-list guests. Just the two of them making a commitment many assumed wouldn't last. The music industry was furious, fearing marriage would ruin Jon's appeal to female fans. But Dorothea never cared about the rock star image, she saw the man behind it all. That honesty became the foundation of their marriage. While millions worshipped Jon as an untouchable icon, Dorothea knew the exhausted performer, the overworked father, and the artist wrestling with doubt. She was never afraid to tell him the truth, even when it hurt. Their relationship survived the usual pitfalls of rockstar life, temptations that destroyed so many celebrity marriages. Jon never denied the challenges, admitting that he hadn't been perfect, but he never let anything jeopardize the life they built together. Perhaps the most telling moment of their partnership came during Jon's vocal crisis. After a Nashville show where his voice faltered badly, he turned to Dorothea for reassurance. Her response was honest and unfiltered, he needed help. It was a painful reality for a man who had spent his life as a rock icon. But rather than walk away, she stood by him, as she always had. And as Jon fought to reclaim his voice, he knew one thing for certain: through every note and every struggle, the love they built over decades remained his greatest strength. Dorothea was the one person who gave it to him straight. While managers and producers might have sugarcoated the situation, she told him exactly what he needed to hear. Over the years, Jon's music has hinted at the struggles they've faced, sort of saying, "God forbid it's over, it's been incredible." And then, you put your faith in the God above and you say, "Let's work on this every day." What you see in the doc happened 1 or 2 years ago now, so I'm well on the road to recovery. Bed of Roses, released in 1993, painted an unfiltered picture of fame's pull with lyrics about missing home while standing under the spotlight. Music and success often competed for his attention, but Dorothea never fought for the limelight. She built a life outside of it, running her karate studio and mentoring at-risk youth, staying grounded while her husband's world constantly shifted. Even after decades together, their marriage has never been about perfection, it's been about adapting, evolving, and facing challenges head-on. Jon's vocal struggles tested not just his career but also the foundation of their partnership. And just as she had from the start, Dorothea stood beside him, not with blind support but with the honesty and strength that have always kept them together. While Dorothea kept things steady at home, the constant pressure of fame was slowly wearing down the man everyone assumed had it all. The price of fame. The stadium was electric, packed with 20,000 fans chanting his name. The lights dimmed, the opening chords of Livin' on a Prayer rang out, and Jon Bon Jovi stepped onto the stage with his usual swagger. To the crowd, he was larger than life, a rock legend who had it all. But beneath the leather jacket and confident smile, the reality was much different. Jon Bon Jovi was falling apart. Between 1988 and 1990, Bon Jovi's New Jersey World Tour pushed past 230 shows across multiple continents. The pace was brutal, night after night of 3-hour performances, endless flights, and the constant pressure to be everywhere all the time. There were no breaks, no time to recover, just a never-ending loop of airports, hotels, and arenas. For Jon, the weight of it all was crushing. Unlike his bandmates, he wasn't just performing, he was also managing business deals, handling label politics, and carrying the responsibility of an empire that supported hundreds of people. The first warning sign came during a show in Tokyo. In the middle of Wanted Dead or Alive, his voice cracked, just for a second. Fans assumed it was exhaustion, but backstage, he was struggling to catch his breath, hands shaking as he grabbed for water. His manager brushed it off. The show had to go on, and it did. For months, Jon pushed through exhaustion, running on adrenaline and sheer willpower. What do you remember about your time here? Oh, it was a magical time. From the fall of 1980 until the spring of '83, I was the gopher in charge. I would run errands, go get the food. The Rolling Stones recorded in this room. David Bowie recorded up here. This is a legendary place. Sleep became fragmented, 2 hours here, another hour there. To keep going, he turned to extreme measures, ice baths to jolt himself awake, breathing exercises stolen from marathon runners, anything to stay upright. But the exhaustion wasn't just physical. His mind, once sharp and creative, started slipping. Songwriting, his passion, felt like a chore. Even hearing a stadium full of people screaming his name left him numb. The music, the thing that had always fueled him, no longer felt like his own. By early 1991, everything came crashing down. While driving along the Pacific Coast Highway on the way to see a psychologist, he felt his vision close in, his heart pounding. The beautiful ocean view blurred into something unrecognizable. A terrifying thought entered his mind, the impulse to let go of the wheel, to just disappear. That moment changed everything. Not long after, his body finally gave out during a show in front of thousands. His legs buckled. He tried to push through, but his body refused. He collapsed as the music cut off and security rushed in. Backstage, medics found his blood pressure dangerously low and his body severely dehydrated. The official statement called it exhaustion, but everyone knew it was something deeper. That night forced Jon to face a truth he had been running from: his body wasn't invincible, no matter how much his ambition wanted it to be. For the first time since Bon Jovi's rise to fame, everything had to stop. The tour was postponed, and the recording sessions were put on hold. The machine that had been running at full speed for years finally slowed down. And for the first time in a long time, Jon Bon Jovi had to figure out how to be human again. As Jon's body slowly recovered, the bond that held Bon Jovi together was starting to crack. The band, the core of their success, wasn't as solid as it seemed. Could they find a way back to what they once had? The guitar goes silent. On a chilly April night in 2013, 20,000 fans packed Calgary's Scotiabank Saddledome, ready to sing along to decades of rock anthems. Backstage, tension crackled as Jon Bon Jovi received news that would change the band forever. Richie Sambora wasn't coming. No warning. No explanation. Just an absence where there had always been a presence. Sambora, who had also been friends with Bon Jovi since childhood, left the band suddenly during the 2013 Because We Can tour, leaving the band scrambling for a new guitarist. Bon Jovi tells people there was no fight or money issue like reports say. He wasn't fired. He just didn't come to work. The announcement to the crew was blunt: Richie wouldn't be performing. There was no time to process it. The band reshuffled the setlist, promoted a backup guitarist, and walked onto the stage with smiles that barely hid their shock. For years, Jon and Richie had been the heart of Bon Jovi's sound. Jon brought the vision, the drive, the relentless energy. Richie added soul, his signature guitar work and harmonies completing a musical partnership that had shaped a generation. Together, they created songs that felt larger than life. Behind the scenes, though, the cracks had been forming for a long time. After Jon's health scare forced the band to slow down, tensions that had been buried under years of touring and recording finally surfaced. Jon, always pushing forward, had little patience for Richie's growing desire to step back. Richie, meanwhile, was torn between the band and his personal life. His daughter, Ava, had become his priority, and the never-ending cycle of touring made him question what he was sacrificing. On top of that, Richie had struggled with substance misuse in the past. While he was committed to staying sober, the pressure of life on the road made it harder. The demands of the band left little room for personal healing. By the time the Because We Can tour kicked off in 2013, everything had changed. Their once unbreakable bond was already hanging by a thread. They spoke more through managers than to each other directly. The no-show in Calgary wasn't a sudden decision, it was the moment years of frustration finally came to a head. For fans, Richie's absence felt impossible to process. How could Bon Jovi exist without the guitarist who had been there since the beginning? Jon, blindsided and hurt, didn't hide his disappointment publicly. He framed it as Richie's choice to leave. Privately, those close to him saw the toll it took. But you people keep saying this kind of thing. There was never a fight. It was never about money. It was never about a girlfriend. It was never. He had issues, you know? He had a lot of issues that he had to deal with. During shows, Jon would glance toward the spot where Richie should have been, his expression briefly betraying the loss. For more than 30 years, they had shared everything: chart-topping hits, sold-out stadiums, the rush of hearing an audience scream their lyrics back at them. Now, Jon was left carrying it alone. In 2018, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction offered a glimpse of what once was. For one night, Richie returned, standing beside Jon as they performed together again. The chemistry was still there, effortless as always. Fans hoped it meant a reunion, but it was just a brief moment of nostalgia. When the night ended, they went their separate ways, Jon continuing the band they built, Richie embracing a quieter life away from the chaos. Their brotherhood had been real, but even the closest brothers sometimes have to walk their paths. As Jon's partnership with Richie fell apart in front of the world, a far more personal crisis was unfolding, one that hit even closer to home. His family, the one thing he held above all else, was facing its breaking point. How much more could he take when the music stops? Jon had taken late-night calls for decades. They were just part of the job: last-minute changes to a tour schedule, urgent updates from producers, or unexpected problems that needed his attention. He had learned to answer with sharp alertness, no matter how exhausted he was. But this call wasn't about music. It wasn't about business. It was about something far more important. It was about his daughter. Stephanie, away at college, had been found unconscious in her dorm room. It wasn't alcohol. It was something stronger, something that had stopped her breathing, something that could have stolen her life. Had a scare with Stephanie not too long ago, where you got a call about her ODing on a form of heroin up in college, and that must have been so terrifying. In that instant, everything Jon had built, his career, his fame, his legendary ability to take control of any situation, meant nothing. He wasn't a rock star now. He wasn't the frontman of a band that had spent decades filling stadiums and breaking records. He was just a father, gripped by a fear so deep it made his world tilt on its axis. Stephanie survived, but Jon would never be the same. For years, he had lived with a sense of control. He had fought for his career, steered his band through highs and lows, and built an image of resilience. If something was broken, he fixed it. If an obstacle appeared, he pushed through it. But this was different. This was something he couldn't outwork, something he couldn't fix with determination alone. It was a brutal reminder that even the strongest, most successful people are helpless when it comes to the ones they love most. And just as he was reeling from that, everything else around him seemed to collapse. The band was locked in a battle with their record label. A completed album, the music he believed in, sat shelved, trapped in corporate limbo while executives played their games. Years of hard work, of creating something meaningful, were reduced to frustrating legal negotiations that seemed to go nowhere. And then there was Richie. His musical partner of 30 years, the man who had stood beside him through every high and low, was gone. Just like that. No warning. No real explanation. One day they were bandmates, and the next, Richie was gone, walking away from everything they had built together. Jon had faced pressure before. He had been through industry battles, exhausting tours, and creative struggles. But this was different. The weight of it all pressed down on him in a way nothing else ever had. The fire that had burned inside him for so long, the drive that had pushed him to build a career most could only dream of, flickered dangerously low. People close to him saw the shift. He wasn't himself. The easy confidence that had always defined him was dimmed. He was quieter, more withdrawn, carrying something heavy that no one else could quite reach. Through it all, Dorothea was there. She had been his steady presence since they were teenagers, long before the fame, the money, the chaos. The world saw them as the rare rock and roll couple that lasted, but their bond was more than that. It wasn't about surviving fame. It was about knowing each other's souls. And when everything else in Jon's life felt unsteady, she was the one thing that remained firm. With her by his side, he started making changes. Priorities shifted. The never-ending cycle of touring, recording, and performing took a back seat to family. He made space for moments he might have overlooked before. The band carried on, but not at the relentless pace it once had. And something else changed too, his music. For years, his songs had been about pushing forward, about resilience, about never backing down. But now, the message had deepened. It wasn't just about fighting through. It was about knowing when to let go, when to lean on others, and how to find strength not just in winning, but in surviving the moments that nearly break you. Jon had spent his life singing about holding on. Now, he truly understood what that meant. Jon Bon Jovi is pushing through a tough recovery to get his voice back, all while dealing with challenges in his marriage. Can he find the strength to keep everything from falling apart? With the weight of fame and personal struggles piling up, could this be the hardest fight of his life? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen, you will enjoy it.